In this video help, we're going to be completing the Consignor's data screen overview on the buttons over here, which are called popovers. I'm going to go ahead and start by going to the Consignor item listing. But before I do that, I want to point out that these are still screens that are in the sublisting of over here. If you need to go to them individually as portal screens or list views, you can pick them off here. This is the Consignor data, and then there would be a list view, which is at this button also to go to the Consignor list view. The Consignor contract, and all these are these buttons here down to this point where it says Consignor item listing. We will complete most of these in this next video that we're watching right now. Okay, let's start out by going to the Consignor items listing. It's going to take a little bit to explain, but basically what we're looking at here is the information that is collected for an add consignment item record. So as you receive items in for the consignor, for this individual one that's a consignor one, the item and consignor ID will already go as soon as you open any of these fields to add data to them. And automatically it'll add the next sequential number for the item ID. As we move across the page, the next thing is that we have these buttons to move up and down between the current records that are in here. For example, if I wanted to go directly to the last record, I would click on last record and it would take me to that screen for the last record. If I wanted to go back a record, I can go to prior record and it's going to move back up between all the records until it gets back to the top. Or we can just jump right to first record to go to the top from the bottom. The next thing is the consignment date, which is added automatically when you create a new record. You don't even have to add it to this field right here. You would go ahead and start putting in the name of the item that you're adding. Now it's a good idea to keep this information in this field right here as short and condensed as possible. The reason for that is that when you put it on an invoice, you don't want it to overflow or push the data over the edge on the invoice. So people need to know what the actual item is that would be on the invoice. This field is edited in the invoice. When you add the sold date, it's going to go ahead and it's going to take that date that this item was sold. Let's move down to here. The item sell price is the initial price for this item that's going to be selling for this listed item above, number 1. The sold at price is added on the invoice for the actual price that this item was sold. If you're going to put in an item, you have to have a quantity, and it'll be calculated by the sold price times the numbers of the quantity. A quantity retail is only a data information field. If somebody says to you that we could buy this at a certain retail price, it's not a bad idea to add that in there, to assume that what you're putting up here needs to be lower. This tells you what the retail market is selling for. At least that's what is indicated. Or if you look at a website and you see a price in there and that is the retail price, it's a good idea when you may cause to have it when you're talking to a client that, say, for example, he's got a piece of furniture and he thinks it's worth $600. And you look it up and you say, well, I can find it selling for retail at $375. It stops a lot of arguing. The next field here is used to copy and paste to whatever you need it to. This is the description of the store itself or the person's name. In this case, it will use this subheader here with the name and call it what it is, the consignor name. The next one is the number 1, that's a consignor ID. The next one is the item ID, then the name of the item, and the description. Now, what happens is there is a short version of this that is used in the labels that are printed labels that you can add a label in here where it says small business labels print, small labels, and we'll just pop over there. The labels actually print 25 labels on one page, 3 across. So if you start to use this to print labels, the best way to do it is to go ahead and print it on white paper, 8.5 by 11, then go ahead and cut out the labels. And these labels can be added to a tag, or they can be use sticky stick on them to stick them on something. But make sure the sticky stick you get is something that can be peeled off quite easily. This label is used showing the consignor ID, the item ID, the description, and the date that it was consigned. It's very important to understand when we go back and look at here that if this item was assigned and created on this date, this record, and it was sold on this date, what you're going to be looking at if it was not sold and it wasn't marked as sold, that down here in this little formula area, This area down here is used if you are a consignment store that uses decreasing discounts on items after certain periods. For example, the first one here is a 30-day, and the price for 30 days at 10% would drop to $18.45. And subsequently, the 60-day, the 90-day are these, 20 and 30%. Now you can change these on an item-by-item basis to whatever you want them to be. If you had more expensive items and you were going to say instead of a 10%, you're going to take some other kind of percent on here, then that's what it would sell for after 30 days, after 60 days, after 90 days. Now this is set up so that you have 90 days is the last date that your assigned period would be. Now you can modify these to whatever you want or not enter them at all. If you don't put a date range in here, then it will not calculate the information and the dates in this area. This is the 30, 60, 90, and 104 days is the span of which this particular setup is made for. And most people that do this, process this thing, would do it at 90 days. They would contact the buyer to indicate that they need to either pick up the items that they're 90 days old, or if they let them sustain in storage or in your retail area, then 104 days they would automatically revert to you. And you do that when you do the consignor's contract, which we'll be covering shortly. That'll indicate in your contract that would be a 90-day, you need to pick it up, in 15 days or forfeit it. Okay, let's go up here. I'm going to pull this down. Let's go back to we're in the portal record instead of in the popover right now. The popover gives a little broader view of everything in the store, but this is an individual record. What you can do in this screen is if you're looking for a specific record by some date or whatever it is in this field, you would go up to the do action and you would say start search, and it would empty out all the data. Now the portal in the consignor data screen does not allow you to do a search. You have to come to the individual record to do a search. So in this particular case, you can combine different fields of data. Like for example, you can put a consignor in, so that would be the only data that would show. You could put a date range in. A date range looks like this. If you're doing a greater than the date that you're going to put in there, you would go put this in and it'd be greater, and then equal to. That would say that it's greater and equal to the current date you're going to put in there. And if you want to do a backward range, you would go in here and you'd say less than or equal to, less than or equal to, and what you would do is stick the date range in the middle. And the way that works is you'd say, for example, I'll put in 3-1/2017, and then the less than or equal to would be on this side of the data, and maybe we want it to be less than, say, the 15th. So it would go from the 1st to the 15th, and less than, if you do the 15th here, it would go 1 to 3-1 to 3-15, and that would be the date range for those records. Now I'm just going to back this off and just say I'll take anything in March as the item. I'd put in the ID 1 for those records that I want to view. And that's enough. I don't need to put any more than that. But I could come down here, for example, and not use a date range and just say I want to see everything over 30 or over 90 days, over 60 days, or over 30 days. And that way I'd get up all the records, and I could do either for one consignor, or I can do it, leave that open and let them all show up, and then the report would show just the records for that. And then you would view those in the list view. Okay, so let's go ahead and complete the search, perform the search. Now the data that's included on here, the price to be sold at was 20. If I'm going to add a buyer's fee, I would come over here and I would put in the buyer's fee, and I would put it in here. It says buyer's fee. In this case, there's 50 cents in there. So what it did, it's going to add for the sale price, the buyer's fee will be added to the actual price that it's going to be sold at. And this field is what shows up in the invoice as far as telling you what the price to sell it is. Now, if I wanted to not have a buyer's fee, I would just back out this buyer's fee here, and it would sell for this price. Now, one of the things you know about the buyer's fee, the way this is set up right now, it's set up so that you split the fee between the consignor and the store for the buyer's fee. When you're buying the application, ask for it to be one of two ways, either split or not split. In this particular case, it was split, and we took 50 cents and the 25 cents goes to each one of the buyer and the consignor, and it effectively changes the price up here for the commission. Now the commission when the item is sold, whatever it's sold for would be put in this consignor to be paid for. I mean, it's automatically put up here, and then the consignor fee is calculated, which will total the total price in 2050. This should be 2050 based on how it actually sold. These are normally empty. You would take whatever the store consignment is or in the consignment fees and put them in these two fields as appropriate, the consignor and then the store. This is when you're getting ready to do commissions, and you want that to show up on the commission page, which is on a report that we'll be covering in the next videos. Now, you already set up when you're itemizing the item in the other screen on the data sheet for the consignor. You put in the tax rate. It calculated the tax for when the item is sold. So when this item sells, it'll automatically drop in the tax at whatever percentage rate you used. Now if you edit this and add additional ones, for example, you say edit, you can add any numbers in here that are decimals, and then they would convert into the actual percentage and calculate in this case 525, it would calculate the tax on the sale of 2050. We've already covered this area, and we've covered this area. Now, commission paid date is the date that you paid the consignor. Okay, that's so when you pay the consignor and actually give the consignor the money or send a check or whatever, you would go ahead and do that. Now, the fees due consignor, if there were any fees that were created for repairs or servicing on the item that's being, say for example, you had a rip in the dress and you had it sewn professionally, whatever the fee was for that will come out of the consignor's commission. So if I put the dollar amount in here for the consignor commission, it would reduce this consignor appear amount to whatever that is minus the fees. Information that's very important to you as far as the store commission and the consignor commission. You can change either one of these to modify it. For example, if I put in here 0.5, okay, let's go back it down a little bit more. Okay, that's the calculated one. The orange one is this one here is where you're going to change it. You're going to go over and you're going to say 0.5, and you'll notice it's going to change the 70% to 50%, so it's 50-50. And so you always change the percent for the store, or the consignor here, and then the store will change. What is this category for this item? You can click the edit and add as many different kinds of things as you sell in your store, and then in the drop-down list you can pick the type of item that in the category that it works within. A lot of times you may want to look for something special, like say for example a ring size 9 or a ring in size 9. And what happens if you want to look that up all through the database to see how many rings are out there at that size, you'd put in ring size 9 and then let it do the search based on those two items, and it'll give you records. You can use the list view in order to see what came out as far as the items that are in there, and then click on the edit to come back into the records and view what actually came up. This is and by the way, this is also editable. It has both numeric signs and small, medium, extra large, and so forth, and you can edit these by clicking the edit and then modifying these in this area. This particular drop-down is very important. This is one that is used to trigger many of the formulas and everything that work within the application. Normally when an item comes in, the first status on this item is for sale. The next one I'm going to come back to. Sold is when it does sell, and it's actually being set up for commissions. There's formulas behind this one and this one, so do not edit these or change them. Leave them like they are, because whatever is put in here like sold or sold store will be what triggers the sale. Okay, when you do a sold store, I'm going to go to that first. Sold store is where the commission is turned to 100% for the store. Okay, so you'd make this 100%, and that way if this was somebody else's consigned item, like say it's consignor number 10, and it went over the time and was forfeited, the store owner, when they sell the item, would you go ahead and just change this to 100% for the store, and then when you sell it, and this is critical, make sure that it's set up for sold store. This separates the commissions so that you don't end up by sending the commissions to the consignor. So if this is 100%, there should be no commission going to the consignor, and it's not going to be paid. This should drop to the consignor to 0, and this should be the full amount of what it sold for, which is $20.50. Okay, now, like I said, if you add, I'm going to just refer back and say, if you add a buyer's fee, the buyer's fee will be included in the sale, but depending upon how the buyer's fee is calculated, it'll either go, and I said split and not split, it'll also affect the commission. If we go not split, then the store will get all the money in the buyer's fee. And if it's split, then the consignor will get part of that fee depending upon how much you actually put in here. It'll be split 50-50. Okay, the item sale price is created and sold. It's shown down here based on how it was actually sold. You have to have a quantity in there on the invoice when it's sold. And then the retail thing we put in here again, it came from the other screen that basically says if this sold at retail, it would sell for a certain amount. And that's just information you use for later on if you're doing sold as kind of items and you want to maybe even have a negotiation with somebody that's going to have an item that they're adding and use that retail price saying this is retail and this is what we know it sells for. Not it's a used item. And of course we covered the recon fee, and the sell discount is created in the invoice and has a difference on the price that's over here based on how much you actually go in there. And that's a dollar value that you put in there. Shipping fee, if you ship it, you put in the shipping fee, and the shipping fee comes out of the consignor's proceeds. It's not a part of the store's fees or calculation. So you'll see that it just, or you can look at it in another way. The commission is the commission, and the shipping fees is paid by the buyer. So that's the other way to look at it too. The other fees that would be charged is the recon fee to the consignor, and you would put that into the recon space over here on the portal. Okay, this is a lot of information to cover, and the next thing we're going to look at is, in fact, actually what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the store credit, and then we're going to look at the labels, and then we're going to go back to the next item in the list of stuff because it's quite long and I don't want this video to go too long. As items are sold under the ID, it's going to list them at whatever they were by, in this case, who the consignor was, the ID for the consignor, the item ID, and the description, and then it'll tell you what the commission was paid to when it's paid to the consignor. So that's based on the commission for the consignor. This way the consignor can see the sum, the amount of credit that was used, and the balance that's actually available to the consignor. Now you have two options. You can just flat pay the consignor with a check instead of actually using the store credit to do that with. You do not have to use the store credit. It is really up to you as the way you run your business. Now to add a picture to the item, it's different in different ways, but this way if you tap or click on it like I'm doing. If you tap, it's going to bring up a little different. It's going to say insert picture, or on the iPad, it'll say something about from the picture gallery or pictures that are available, and then you would put that in there. Okay, and that's the item photo for in the screen. Okay, the next thing we did look at the consignor's report, and we did look at the labels, and I explained the labels, and the labels for the item that you're viewing. Okay, and then if you want to, and I think I explained when I go back, that if you put the date range in up here, you can pick items based on the consignor and the date range to show only those items that would be in a date range or in the idea for those. And you use that when you're doing the commissions. You would use sold if it's sold because that's what you're paying commissions on. You would use sold, the ID for the consignor. You don't have to worry about the item ID because what it's going to do, it's going to take everything that's sold for that consignor, and you can make a date range if you want to for the date range starting in the pay period that you're within. And I showed you how to do that formula. And that would bring all the records up for this, and then you would go to the consignor report in order to see the items that were gathered and that were going to be paid for. Now this is going to be in the next video, and then we're going to cover this in the balance of stuff on the screen. So let's go ahead and take a time out right here and then come back for the next video.